So friends, we recently learned that there's going to be a brief pause in the New York grand jury investigation of Donald Trump's crimes. What might that mean? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, there's some recent reporting that is a little deflating, a little disappointing. It looks like there's going to be a relatively brief pause in the grand jury investigation of Donald Trump's New York State crimes. That is the investigation being conducted by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Here is the new reporting from CNN. Headline: New York grand jury investigating Trump will break for most of April, source says. And that article begins, the Manhattan grand jury hearing the hush money case involving former President Donald Trump is currently scheduled to break after April 5 and restart later in the month, according to a source familiar with the matter. If the grand jury does not hear the case again for several weeks, it will pause what had been a wave of anticipation that a former president could be indicted for the first time in American history. Trump himself incorrectly predicted he would be arrested last week amid news reports about security preparations being made in the event of an indictment. So friends, notably, why were expectations raised that Donald Trump might be indicted last week? Because Donald Trump lied and posted something saying, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday in Manhattan. Protest, take our nation back. Well, that was a lie. It didn't come from the district attorney's office. It didn't even come from Donald Trump's own defense team. Because when they were questioned, they said, yeah, we've received no such notice. We don't know anything about it. So in substance, Donald Trump's own defense team signaled our client is lying. So now it feels a little deflating, a little disappointing, because our hopes were raised, albeit based on Trump's lie. There were some other data points that suggested that District Attorney Alvin Bragg was getting close to wrapping up the grand jury. I think the most significant data point was there was accurate reporting, not from Donald Trump, that Trump had been invited to appear before the grand jury and tell his side of the story, which is usually what we save until the end of a grand jury investigation. So I think there were some important signs that Alvin Bragg was wrapping up, but turns out perhaps he needs more time. So of course we get a post from Donald Trump, right? Here's what he posted. I have gained such respect for this grand jury and perhaps even the grand jury system as a whole. The evidence is so overwhelming in my favor and so ridiculously bad for the highly partisan and hateful district attorney that the grand jury is saying, hold on, we are not a rubber stamp, which most grand juries are branded as being. We are not going to vote against a preponderance of evidence or against large numbers of legal scholars all saying there is no case here. Drop this sick witch hunt now. You know, friends, it's interesting how in just the space of a few sentences, Donald Trump seems to go from confident to really desperate. Well, you know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of Donald Trump declaring that the Georgia grand jury, the Georgia special grand jury, had totally exonerated him. And as it turns out, that also was untrue. Remember this reporting? Headline, Georgia grand jury foreperson laughs when told Trump claims he's been exonerated. And that article begins, the foreperson of Georgia's special grand jury investigating the attempt by Donald Trump and his associates to overturn the 2020 election results in the state, laughed when told that the former president claims to have been exonerated. Emily Coors, 30, a resident of North Fulton, was asked to respond to Mr. Trump's claims of total exoneration on Tuesday. She rolled her eyes and burst out laughing. Quote, "Did he really say that?" she asked. "Oh, that's fantastic. That's phenomenal. I love it." The former president had earlier posted on social media, quote, "Thank you to the special grand jury in the great state of Georgia for your patriotism and courage. Total exoneration." Turns out that wasn't entirely accurate. The grand jury foreperson Emily Coors gave a follow-up interview to CNN, and here is what she added regarding Donald Trump's claim that her grand jury, the grand jury of which she was the forewoman, had totally exonerated him. Here is what Ms. Coors said. Quote, "I'm not positive he had the right document. Maybe he misunderstood when we said there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud." So I think it's pretty clear what Ms. Coors is signaling, and it ain't an exoneration. In fact, it's likely to be the exact opposite. I think once we see that special grand jury report, we will learn that the special grand jury recommended Donald Trump be indicted for his crimes. And some of what other grand jurors said in media interviews they gave, as they were permitted to do, according to the presiding judge, they said that there are as many as 12 individuals who are likely to be indicted, who the special grand jury recommended should be indicted. So, total exoneration? Yeah, not so much. Okay, but let's go back to the original question. What might account for the April pause in the New York District Attorney's grand jury investigation? Well, first of all, let's remember our expectations were raised because Donald Trump lied about being arrested on Tuesday in Manhattan. Of course, he used that as a fundraising vehicle. Shocking, I know. But it could very well be that there's some more investigating that Alvin Bragg needs to do before he's prepared to ask the grand jury to vote on charges for Donald Trump. Because just because the grand jury is pausing for the month of April or part of the month of April doesn't mean detectives and investigators and agents aren't still interviewing witnesses with a view toward perhaps presenting them to the grand jury. So it could be as simple as the routine law enforcement circumstance of needing to do some more investigating. But it could be something else, friends. When I was a prosecutor in D.C. for decades, it was pretty common that the person I was investigating, or the conspiracy I was investigating, or the criminal organization or enterprise I was investigating committed crimes not only in Washington, D.C., but in other jurisdictions, frequently across the river in Virginia, across the state line in Maryland. So what would I do? I would coordinate with my law enforcement partners in Virginia, in Maryland, and anywhere else that the target of my grand jury investigation might have been committing crime. And as best we could, we would try to come up with some sort of an overarching plan that made sense for all of our cases, for all of the involved jurisdictions. That's when sort of prosecutors are at their best, when they put their egos aside and they do what's best for the case or the cases and the victims and the involved communities. It could very well be, friends, that Alvin Bragg is coordinating with Fani Willis and that they're both coordinating with Jack Smith and perhaps other prosecutors from the Department of Justice, and they're trying to come up with some kind of an overarching plan that makes the most sense. Could Alvin Bragg be taking a pause because Fani Willis is on the eve of indicting Donald Trump? Could they both be taking a pause because they've coordinated with federal prosecutors, with Jack Smith and his team, and maybe a federal indictment is in the offing? We don't know. And I'm not suggesting any of this militates in favor of Donald Trump being indicted tomorrow or next week. But I think it's actually some informed speculation that maybe this pause, this April pause in New York, has to do with either further investigating that Alvin Bragg believes is necessary or coordination among the various jurisdictions that are investigating Donald Trump for his crimes. But we don't know what we don't know. What we do know is that justice matters. Friends, it's hard for me to say be patient because goodness knows my patience is way back in the rearview mirror right now. But we will have to wait this out. You know, justice is definitely not a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It is a lifelong journey. And all we can do is try to keep, bending that arc of the moral universe in the direction of justice. And I hold fast to Martin Luther King Jr.'s saying, because I believe that to be true. I believe accountability is coming. It has to. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.